Welcome to Watching the Throne.
Lyrical analysis of Kanye West.
My name's Chris Lambert.
My name's Travis Bean, and we're talking about Closed on Sunday today.
Travis, you sound abnormally sad about that.
Nah, it's nothing. Don't worry about it.
No, I'm concerned. We're all friends here.
No,
What's going on?
I really don't want to, gloom up the podcast with all this. So,
Well, too late now.
well, if you're gonna pry, we came into this on. I thought it was gonna be like fun, easy, good time. Like we talk about Chick-fil-A. I just got my tickets to Sunday service, and I'm all ramped up. And then we sit down to discuss this song, and damn it, it's complicated.
Yeah, we always have these moments. I feel like it's an eye roll thing at this point. Like we'll be like, "Oh, we're gonna be talking about this. Should be easy, right? Like should be a quick one." And there's always a pause where we know in our hearts it won't be, but we still like to think that it will be.
Yeah, I would like to think I'm going to get off work at 5 today, but no, not happening.
No, overtime, baby. Overtime. I mean, how many tabs did I I have like 17 tabs open of different topics we have to discuss in a song that's just 2 verses.
That's the name of your memoir, Too Many Tabs.
Too many tabs, the Chris Lambert story.
I mean, it's an intriguing title. That would stop a lot of people at the bookstore.
They would be like, I need to learn more about this guy. He's a man of the people. I have a tab problem too.
Tabs Anonymous.
It's taberific. That's what Closed on Sunday is. It might be complicated, but it's taberific.
Yeah, that's tabful. That's not even a play on words. It's just a new word that shows how wonderful the word tab is.
Now I'm trying to figure out how to use it in like a sentence. Like, Stevens, you've done good work this year. You're tabful.
That was a tabful good time.
Just full of a lot of like specific differing moments that stand out to you. That's tabful.
Yeah. You know what? And all jokes aside, I want to move on from this joke now officially. But I really do think that Sunday service is going to be tabful. Like, I'm just really excited about it.
Oh, you got me there.
Yeah.
You had me in the first half.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a comedy podcast now.
Look at us go. We're coming up with this off the cuff.
None of this is written out.
Just got this. Could you imagine us actually writing this out?
All right, this is the part where you intro the song. So let's move on.
Oh, yeah, I see that here. Okay. So Closed on Sunday. It
Smash
is
cut.
Oh, I like when you get all Michael Bay.
Although I like the idea that Martin Bay, I thought you were going to say Martin Scorsese, and I would like a collaboration between those two.
Yeah, how amazing would that be? You have like a part 1 and part 2 in the movie, and like part 1, Scorsese's handling all like the backstory and the build-up, and part 2, Michael Bay tags in and just
Can you imagine
destroys everything.
If Irishman, the second half is the second 2 hours is all Michael Bay?
I want to see more of that, actually. You need to have like tag team movies where like part of the plot is handled by the one filmmaker, and then the other filmmaker comes in and just goes to town.
Yeah, I mean, that would free up half of your time and you could make twice as many movies.
Think about how incoherent everything would be. But, I mean, at the same time, look at Suicide Squad. That was one director.
Yeah, well, kind of 2 directors if you count the studio as a director.
Yeah, maybe this is a bad idea. All right, Closed on Sunday. It is track number 4 on Jesus is King. And if you've been following along so far, every hour acted as more of a intro track that set up what the mission is going to be. Kanye adding his voice to the choir of everybody. And then Sella introduced us to the broader picture and world that Kanye's operating in, more of like the character introduction rather than more of the theme introduction. And then Follow God zooms in more specifically on Kanye's day-to-day life and happenings. So you go from the broadest to broader to finally into the micro aspects of the story. So after we see Follow God have Kanye really trying to be more Christ-like, but struggling. He's wrestling with God, right? Despite having religion in his life, despite having faith in his life, there's still a little bit of struggle there. And Closed on Sunday picks up that spirit of conflict, at least in how religion is working into Kanye's life at this point in time.
He's trying to be Christ-like.
He's trying.
Maybe failing a little bit. You shouldn't fight with your dad. Every day is precious with your dad.
Yes. And, Kanye should know that better than anybody.
Yeah. If your dad tells you you're not being Christ-like, he's right. You should listen to him.
I mean, even at the end of the video, Kanye was like, it took me, 43 years to find out that my dad's my best friend.
Yeah. So everyone, take a lesson from Kanye's book.
And there's that cool moment in Follow God that he's arguing with his father, which is a stand-in not just for arguing with his dad, but also kind of fumbling around with faith a little bit, and having those levels of both the personal and the gospel. And that's one of the cool things on this album is that intersection between personal and gospel and how one infuses the other and the other infuses vice versa.
I wonder if that'll come up on today's song.
Oh, let's see. Good old Closed on Sunday. It's gonna, even just talking about the samples is...
Yeah, we aren't going to get to the lyrics for like 40 minutes, so settle in.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about this. The first sample that really stands out, that really makes the foundation of Closed on Sunday is Martin Fierro by Grupo Vocal Argentino. But Martin Fierro, it's their interpretation of the famous Argentine poem. It's an epic poem. It's 2,000 lines, which is similar in length to The Wasteland, which is also a 2,000 line poem. And the plots of Martin Fierro, as I read from Wikipedia, should I read it or should I just give a stylized synopsis?
Let's do both. Let's see how unbearable your reading is first, and then if we need to change it, we'll change it.
Okay. So as Wikipedia overviews it, the protagonist is an impoverished gaucho, and Martin Fierro has kind of become the representative or the ideal figure of the gauchos, which in South American Argentine culture were the cowboys, right? The same way America has its fascination with cowboys, the gauchos were similar. A bit rebellious, a bit country, always riding horses and doing cool farm shit. So Martin Fierro, who has been drafted to serve at a border fort, defending the Argentine inner frontier against the native people. His life of poverty on the Pampas is somewhat romanticized. His military experiences are not. He deserts and tries to return to his home. Things don't go well when he's in the military. But he discovers that his house, farm, and family are gone. If you've ever seen the movie Gladiator, it's kind of like that.
This is on the Wikipedia page?
I'm kind of riffing now.
Just kidding.
Kind of just riffing. He deliberately provokes an affair of honor by insulting a woman in a bar. In the knife duel that ensues, he kills her male companion. The narration of another knife fight suggests by its lack of detail that it is one of many. Fierro becomes an outlaw pursued by the police militia. In a battle with them, he acquires a companion, Sergeant Cruz. Inspired by Fierro's bravery and resistance, defects and joins him mid-battle. The two set out to live among the natives, hoping to find a better life there. And some of the other details is that prior to being drafted, Fierro was a singer, and he was just known for singing, and he would go and entertain people by singing and playing guitar. It isn't until he's drafted and gets into the chaos of the fighting and war and desertion that he starts living a much more dark and rebellious life of just drinking and knife fights and almost being killed all the time.
Interesting.
And kind of rebelling against society. Yeah.
Now, that's an interesting, very broad synopsis of the poem, Chris, but I gotta ask, what is this song, and why would Kanye be sampling a song that's referencing this poem? It doesn't sound like it has anything to do with Kanye.
No, and specifically this song, we asked on Twitter for some help because the lyrics were all in Spanish, and couldn't understand them. And good old Santi in BSAS on Twitter translated them for us, and they come out to, "Here I come to sing to the beat of my guitar, because a man who is kept from sleep by an uncommon sorrow comforts himself with singing, like a solitary bird. Singing I'll die, singing they'll bury me, and singing I'll arrive at the eternal Father's feet. Out of my mother's womb I came into this world to sing. Sorrows don't kill me so long as my skin's whole. Let the sun come in summer and the frost in winter time. If this world is a hell, what's that to worry a Christian man? I'll never give myself up into the arms of death. I drag my sad fate along step by step as best I can, because where a weak man gets stuck, a strong one can pull through. And now with this report, I've come to the end of my story. All the sad things you've heard about, I've told because they are true. Every gaucho that you see is woven thick with misfortunes, but he has to fix his hope in the God who created them. And with that, I'll take my leave. I've related as I know how evils that everyone knows about, but no one told before now." So in this way, in the Martin Fierro song coming from the poem, Martin positions himself as a messenger, much in the way that Kanye has positioned himself and has talked about Paul as being, that he's relating to everybody what befalls the gauchos and what this horrible fate is that some people suffer, but that it doesn't mean much to him because he knows he's going to arrive at the eternal Father's feet. That if the world's a hell, he's a Christian man, so what does he have to really worry about? But there's still a sense of conflict that comes through. He's never going to give himself up into the arms of death. He's going to drag my sad fate along step by step. He pictures himself as a strong man compared to a weak man. All of these things kind of resonate with what we've been hearing Kanye say on Sella, Follow God, and what we'll see on Closed on Sunday. And maybe most importantly, Martin Fierro was a singer. And there's a resonance between every hour talking about singing and adding your voice to this choir. And here Martin Fierro was singing, but kind of a different song, a more rebellious song. And Kanye himself is a bit of a rebel.
Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to the inherent tension of the beginning of Jesus is King, and that Kanye thinks he's being Christ-like, thinks he's a man of God, but is very antagonistic and isn't always acting in the most God-like behavior, you know? If he was following God, as he says he is, then he would have no need to combat with people, and he would be accepting, and he would make the best of what he's got. But he's really embattled in this sort of spiritual warfare at the beginning of the album, and it seems like that's a big part of the poem. The song samples from several different chapters of the poem, so it's kind of a broad overview of like the general journey of Martin Fierro. But I mean, Kanye chose this song, and this song specifically calls out some very combative parts of his journey. I mean, it all just seems to be connecting, especially the part where Martin Fierro, you know, part of the story where he goes off to live somewhere else, like to create his own environment, to live in a new land and like start anew. That's all very much of the journey on Jesus is King.
You mean that relates to Kanye, who bought a ranch in Wyoming and has started making a lot of his life happen in Wyoming? Crazy.
That ranch that appears in the Closed on Sunday commercial? Or trailer. Or, God, music video. Well, if there was a trailer for the song, I imagine we'd see it.
You're right. Yeah, the music video does take place in this landscape that feels, I think if you have a sense of Martin Fierro, like very Martin Fierro-y. Mm-hmm. Just in terms, it would be the landscape of the gaucho. Even though it's in America, which is cowboy landscape, there's that similarities between the two. And just having a story that's about somebody competing with society and rebelling against the demands of the military and what people are telling you to fight for and fight against seems relevant to Kanye overall.
Yeah, and I think Kanye really relates it more to his story just by the fact that he does have his family. Like, in a way, Martin Fierro lost his. Like, Kanye is kind of twisting the story on its head, and Kanye can still fight for that, and he can still fight for his family through God. He's still a Christian man who can be a protector of them. And I really think that speaks to, beyond sampling Martin Fierro for the lyrics, just the sound of the song. As we come in, it kind of has this creepy, strange tone that almost reminds me of like kind of like the beginning of Thin Red Line, Terrence Malick movie. Kind of like this poetic look at war. Like it has this very ominous feel to it that I don't think I've ever really heard in a Kanye West song before. It's such a strange, specific energy to come in, especially at the beginning part of the album after Follow God, when he ends the song screaming and he's fighting with his dad. Like, this seems to me to carry that energy.
Yeah, didn't Jordan tell us when the album came out that it felt like being in the woods and there's witchcraft going on around you?
Yeah, it does.
It seems like the start of a Halloween movie, or if you're going to remake Hocus Pocus, like you would put this song at some point in Hocus Pocus when the witches were doing their thing. Like, there's just, it has that strange energy, but it's beautiful. Like,
yeah,
it's very beautiful. And before we get to the second sample, just Santi asked us to shout out their Instagram, Santi by Santi, SATIBY So if you want to thank Santi for the translation, there you go.
Yeah, and sorry if you post weird shit on Instagram. We're just fulfilling a request.
Yeah, I haven't checked it out yet, but I should go follow. So the second sample, which is a strange one because I don't think it's one that we've ever encountered. Or if we have encountered it, we missed it. But it's a little different. It's Nujabes. I feel like I'm saying that wrong. I should have looked it up before. Featuring Shing02, called Lovesick Part 1. And it's part of a compilation of the Lovesick compilation Hexology. There's 6 parts to it, and this is the first part that came out way back in 2001. And it was first part of a collection in 2003, and then part of the Hexology in 2015. But what Kanye samples isn't a lyric, and he doesn't bring in the production into the song. It's not like he took the drums or he took some other part of the instrumentation. There's just a saxophone that comes in near the end of Lovesick that Kanye takes the melody from. And that's the melody he uses when he starts the second verse saying, "Stand up for my home." It's that do-do-do-do-do, like verbatim.
Yeah, I think it's so that wouldn't really make it a sample. It's more of like this melodic interpolation, which I do think Kanye's done before, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
No, it's rare enough that we're not like, oh, just another one of these.
Yeah. Definitely not something he makes a habit of doing, as far as we know.
No, and so the lyrical connection, it's a third verse that really stands out, at least to us, in terms of a connection to Jesus is King and Kanye specifically. He starts talking about these relationship dynamics. How I could write a book on how you make me feel, but how about this song that I wrote for you? In the cold night to relax when all I knew was to hold tight. Remember that time that I spoke to the crowd in a full house and realized that you was my ace. I was the joker on the stage singing the blues, all eyes on me and had nothing to prove. But yo, I thought I knew what a diamond shine like, but I felt a sharper love in the limelight from the Queen of Hearts watching me quietly from the upper deck balcony. That's like he thought he was getting all this love from the crowd and being a celebrity, but the sharper love that cut through the limelight was from this woman who was there watching him, the woman that he loves. But it's the next line in particular that really stands out. Sometimes I do suspect I'm an actor in a well-scripted live divine comedy. Coming off of Follow God, Kanye kept talking about he felt like his life was a movie, that his life was lifelike, that there was something scripted about it, that it wasn't reality, so to speak, that it wasn't real life. And to then have the very next song have a sample of a song that has a line that's very similar to that just seems, I mean, it could be coincidence. It very much could be, absolutely. But at the same time, like, what are the odds of that?
Yeah, I think the real, like, if we're going to be really reaching to find a connection between this song and Jesus is King, I think you could look to Martin Fierro and, you know, story about this guy who lost his family and is just combative. And that directly contrasts this song, which is all about love. And this song so deeply relates to Kanye, somebody who was stuck in the limelight for so long and fell to all its vices and was brought out of that because of Kim. That's what he details on Jesus and the Life of Pablo. And yay, this coming out of this low place he was in because of his family. And here we have a song about his family, and he's so protective of his family, this family that Martin Fierro lost. So if we're really looking for an amalgamation of all this coming together, like that could be it. Like maybe that's the end this song gives us.
It's true, because before we get into Close on Sunday, so much of the lyrics are about like protecting your family and keeping them safe. And it's like with your family, you're more like lovesick and you have this upbeatness. This is what they provide you. This is what they give you. Without your family, you end up more Martin Fierro-y.
So Kanye's a mix of Martin Fierro and this song. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Oh, that only took us, 20 minutes to say?
Not bad.
Not bad for us. Okay. So Closed on Sunday. Should we get into it?
Yeah. Let's get into those juicy first lines. It's going to make me hungry just reading them.
Closed on Sunday. You're my Chick-fil-A. Closed on Sunday. You're my Chick-fil-A.
My mouth is watering.
So there's some wordplay here that I'm sure most people are well aware of at this point. Like, Closed on Sunday is usually a thing because everybody goes to church on Sunday. It's considered the day of rest in a lot of the Christian denominations. So the idea of putting everything away and being closed on Sunday is one that's familiar to a lot of people. But specifically, Chick-fil-A is one of the few, maybe the only major fast food chain that is closed every Sunday, no matter what. Which always bothered me as a kid, being in the mall after Sunday school, Jewish Sunday school, I might add. We would go to the mall and I'd see Chick-fil-A closed and I'd always be like, I want to eat there. Why is it always closed? Years of that. So I've always
That's a rough childhood.
I've always been angry, right? We all have our core like embitterments that really shape us as people. Mm-hmm. That's mine.
Yeah, that's your root.
Yeah.
I love these lines to death. Like, they are everything I love about Kanye. And I know people have a problem with the fact that he's even referencing Chick-fil-A, which has in the past donated to anti-LGBT groups. And I understand that anger and that frustration. But to me, this is everything. Like, Kanye's referencing something that's so like next level. Like, it is the embodiment of what he wants to be. It is a business that walks the walk. They don't just say like they are religious and preach religious principles. Like, they literally close on Sunday and lose millions, billions of dollars because they're honoring God on Sunday. Like, and that's what Kanye's looking to do, is what the song's all about. On Chick-fil-A's website, they have this video. They actually have a video that's called Closed on Sunday. And at the end of the video, it says it's not about being closed, but it's about how we use that time. And I really think that's what Kanye's getting at in this song, and that it's not just about, honoring the Sabbath and doing it because you're supposed to. It's what you do with that time. And it's such a beautiful encapsulation of what Kanye seeks to do. Like, he's not just referencing Chick-fil-A for the fuck of it because it's funny. I mean, it is funny. And again, that's why I love the line. pop culture Kanye. Like, he's back from his college dropout days, but it just means so much to him. You can tell it does.
I think that's always the really cool thing, and maybe one of the complicating things about Kanye lyrics is that a lot of people will just take the superficial aspect from it. Like, Chick-fil-A's closed on Sunday. Like, he's talking about being closed on Sunday. That's like a joke. How stupid or how funny. Like, and just leave it be at that. But you make a great point in that it's meaningful because Kanye, as a artist, as a business owner, as an entity, especially on this album, is looking for ways of how to integrate his faith into everything in his life. And Chick-fil-A is a blueprint for that. And as you said, there is controversy surrounding Chick-fil-A's practices around LGBT communities and donations and how they handle that. But I think we talked about this, like, very similar to the Trump scenario, in that it's not the specifics of what Chick-fil-A is doing or what Trump's specific policies are, but it's what they represent. A business that, as you described, is walking the walker, is integrated religion in a way that's been successful. And Trump is somebody that was an outsider that was able to become president.
Yeah.
And that's enough for Kanye to be a fan. Never mind, like, the controversies and all of that part. He might not agree with that, but the overall, what they represent is something that he takes inspiration from.
Yeah. And it goes beyond really being like a fan. Like, he's empowered by it. Like, Kanye was in such a low place after the life of Pablo and felt really taken by celebrity, and that he wasn't truly being who he was supposed to be, and felt like he had lost his connection with God and his profession. And here, like, thank God we have this Kanye back. Like, he's not afraid to support Donald Trump, and he's not afraid to mention Chick-fil-A in a song and say that he's inspired by the way they run their business. There's nuance to the conversation. We can talk about the problems there are with supporting Trump and referencing Chick-fil-A, but for him, like, it's empowering. It brings back the Kanye we grew up knowing and loving.
So we go from just saying you might Chick-fil-A to then getting into, what you do that makes you closed on Sunday, or honoring that model. Hold the selfies, put the gram away. Like, get off your phone, stop looking at social media, and put the gram away also feels like a follow-up to Follow God, where he talks about looking at the gram and he doesn't even like likes. Like, in that song, it's part of his behavior that's not Christ-like. And here it's that next step where he's saying, all right, I need to put the gram away. Get your family, y'all hold hands and pray, come together rather than these self-interested things. When you got daughters, always keep them safe. It's a good parent thing to do, no matter what your religion is or what day of the week it is.
Yeah. And it's a line that I feel like a lot of these lines feel like continuations of other songs where he's talked about his family. And this one screams violent crimes to me. Like, violent crimes ended with him hoping to be a better father and looking to the future and what his daughter could become. And that's what I love about this song. Like, this song kind of feels like the cap to all that, like him walking the walk and finally, like, living that way.
It also makes me think of All of the Lights, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was a song where the dad's behavior, as Kanye portrays it, ends up with his daughter having a very rough life.
Yeah.
By the time Fergie delivers that verse. So always keep them safe. And he goes from that to watch out for vipers. Don't let them indoctrinate. And yeah, that's where we start to get into things.
Fuck. Okay. So this is going through the song. There wasn't a ton of research we were really doing as far as like biblical passages, but vipers is something that kind of that strikes you because you think of snakes and how the devil like embody the snake, and they talk about snakes and vipers plenty in the Bible, and they almost always carry that negative energy. Genius annotates a part of the Bible, Matthew 3:7. But when he saw many of the Pharisees and Sadducees, coming to where he was baptizing, he said to them, "You brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the coming wrath?" And it always kind of has that energy. But the interesting thing here is that particular passage that Matthew's writing about John the Baptist, and John the Baptist is speaking through Isaiah in that part. Now, Isaiah is a guy who wrote, this is going to blow your mind, he wrote the book of Isaiah.
Whoa.
I know. And Isaiah was like, he's known as like one of the biggest prophets of Christianity. Like he would always like make these prophecies and God spoke through him. And he would always like envision the future, in this future where people would be punished for the way they were living. But then he also has this part of Isaiah 11, where he envisions this future where people aren't fighting but getting along. And he uses all this language of, he says, the wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. And in Isaiah 11:8, he says, the infant will play near the cobra's den, and the young child will put its hand into the viper's nest. And it's interesting here to me that Genius is annotating this specific passage about John the Baptist, but John the Baptist is referencing Isaiah, and Isaiah doesn't speak about a viper negatively. And I think that kind of speaks again to the tension here at the beginning of the album, that Kanye is using vipers in a very negative way to talk about his enemies. We don't want my enemies to indoctrinate my children and fill their heads with these ideas like, I need to protect my family. Yet here, Isaiah is saying that for the world to get better, like we need to embrace those people we disagree with or have different beliefs in us. Like we need to form a better community. And as we know of the album narrative, like Kanye needs to go from that combative place to somebody who's more accepting and internal and isn't trying to change everybody's mind, but has to be comfortable with himself as a Christian and lead the best life he can as a Christian.
When people might be thinking like, there's so many Viper references, why do you jump to Isaiah? And there's a specific reason for that. And you may remember the Fade music video that came out back in 2016 and got a lot of conversation for two reasons. One, Teyana Taylor's dancing was incredibly like captivating, and everybody was just in awe of her dancing, her body, like how she commanded the camera, but also because like 3 minutes into the video, it has this twist where we go from her dancing alone in a gym surrounded by workout equipment to being in the shower with her husband, Amon Shumpert, to then being back in the gym, except now it's filled with sheep. And she has become a cat, and she's a naked cat person with like the face of a cat tail coming on. She's holding to the back of Amon, who's normal Amon. He's also naked, but he's normal Amon. And holding their baby. And everybody's looking at that going like, what the fuck? How did we get here? What is this? And there were a few references that came about from it. You know, typically you could just see it as going from the single life to having a connection with somebody else to the transformation that then occurs when you have family, and that this gym becomes something else, that you become something else. The cat persona could be very empowering. Kanye has talked before about the Creme Master cycle, which was by this guy, Matthew Barney. And Kanye said in an interview with Vanity Fair, as Genius notes, Matthew Barney is my Jesus. And that he actually that Barney was an inspiration for the Famous music video that came out just a few months before the Fade video. So Barney has a Creme Master cycle where people at one part in it become animals. There's a lot of mythology imagery going on. So there's a woman that's a cat and she's naked and she has the face of a cat, she has the tail of a cat, but goes so far to have like cheetah spots on her and leopard spots. So you could view it as a nod to that. But people also made the connection between Fade and Isaiah 11. The wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. Here you have a cat that could be a cheetah, lion figure. You have the sheep, and then you have this little child that could lead them. And there's that sense of utopia, maybe, or transformed world that relates to the vision of Isaiah 11, as well as it also has the lines regarding the viper's nest. They will neither harm nor destroy, or no, relating to all the animals getting together. They will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. You may remember that one of Kanye's favorite movies that he's obsessed with is called Holy Mountain.
Yeah.
So that line being in this section could be coincidence as well, but it's something that Kanye already has a strong affinity for. It's something he referenced in Violent Crimes, and this section seems to have been of motivation specifically for the Fade video. So it might be something, at least the idea of the viper going from enemy to, not friend necessarily, but cohabitator, is a vision that could exist. So we come back to Closed on Sunday, You My Chick-fil-A. And this time it gets a little extended. You're my number one with the lemonade. And combos on menus are often described as number one, number two, number three. So it's a nice play on how meaningful Kim is to him, or God is to him, or his family, but comparing it to Chick-fil-A as well.
So are we to think that the first time he says close on Sunday, is he talking about Kim, or is he talking about God? And then the second part here, he's talking about Kim?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because the first time the "your" isn't clear. It's just "you're my Chick-fil-A." Mm-hmm. Like, could that be God? Could that be Kim? Because he continues after this second time with "raise our sons, train them in the faith." And that "our," that collective, is way more specific to him and Kim, right?
Right.
But in that first part, like hold the selfies, put the gram away, get your family, that's not personal. That's talking to other people. When you got daughters, always keep them safe. So it seems almost like in that first part, he's staying more general. And in the second part, it's finally become personal. So I guess you could make an argument then that opening You're My Chick-fil-A may not necessarily be as specific to Kim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting. I feel like he probably is always talking about Kim, and it's just, and that way it kind of infuses the song with the energy he's trying to bring in and just the love for his family, but I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know if it matters much either way, but it is interesting. Raise our sons, train them in the faith. So just a little bit of a contrast from when you got daughters, always keep them safe, raise their sons, train them in the faith. You even have the same end rhyme with safe and faith. Through temptations, make sure they're wide awake. So with the daughters, you don't want them indoctrinated by vipers. With the sons, similarly, you don't want temptation to lure them away or get them to maybe go to sleep, in quotes. You had a whole thing about sleeping and waking, right?
Yeah. Well, Kanye went on James Corden, and this is also in the Genius Annotation, but it's in a comment. And Kanye gets very philosophical here, but and he rambles in that Kanye philosophical kind of way. His exact quote is, "I'd say when you go to sleep, would you agree that you are asleep when you're asleep? And when you wake up, would you agree that you are awake when you are awake? Would you agree that those are two different states? People who don't believe are walking dead. They are asleep, and this is the awakening." So I think Kanye, that's a very kind of convoluted way to convey a simple idea. And this is that when Kanye wasn't following God, he was asleep. He wasn't truly awake. I actually just watched Eyes Wide Shut, and that movie gets at the exact same idea, that Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman were kind of walking through their marriage asleep for so many years and didn't truly see each other. And at the end, they come out of their dream and they finally see each other for who they are, and they see each other's flaws. And because of that, they can rebuild and they can be better to each other. And I think that's generally the idea here, is that if you're going to follow God, like, you need to be awake. You can't be living in this dream world.
I like it. Eyes Wide Shut gets a lot of hate that it shouldn't.
Does it? Man, it's a really strange movie. I didn't remember how weird it was. but it's it's incredible. Like, and I think what helps is if you view the movie like kind of as a comedy, like a comedy about a dude who can't get laid. It's kind of funny in that way, and it works. Like, you could totally see Eyes Wide Shut played out as a raunchy, over the top comedy if it was like done by different people. But because it has that weird Kubrick energy and pace, I think it just throws people off.
Yeah, I remember when I first watched it, but I was like middle school or early high school, like freshman of high school, and just being like, what is going on?
It's a beautiful movie.
It is. But yeah, that idea of once you're tempted away from faith to live that kind of life that Kanye had been leading, that was indulgent, that Sablo, still going to make it a thing, that Sablo life, Saul version of Pablo, you go to sleep and he's wanting them to be wide, not just awake, but wide awake.
Yeah, I love it.
Yep. And you accomplish that by following Jesus, listen and obey. No more living for the culture. We're nobody's slaves.
Yeah.
And that idea, I think, reinforces that, right? That's a temptation. Like, no more living for the culture. We nobody's slave. It also calls back to follow God and the idea of being part of the simulation and being stuck in doing the things that culture wants you to do, that your fame demands that you do, that may not be for you, and that getting away from being a slave in that way.
Yeah, I think it just, again, speaks to, especially if this song being about his family and him talking so much about his kids and kind of the language he's used about his family in the past. Kanye really doesn't want them to fall prey to everything he fell prey to. Kanye, I can only, what I've gathered from interviews is he feel like he wasted a lot of his life doing the things that he thought celebrities were supposed to do, and he was never following God. So here he's saying follow Jesus, like make sure your kids are wide awake, keep your daughter safe, like train them, raise them in the way you wished you had lived your life.
And there's a cool callback to Selah, which at the end of the first verse, Kanye has, they say the weak start on Monday, but the strong start on Sunday. Won't be in bondage to any man, John 8:33. We, the descendants of Abraham, yea, should be made free, which is a nice play on the fact that it's like, yea, shall be made free in the general or global you, like all of you shall be made free. But with Kanye being named Yea, it makes it sound like that he shall be made free, that he's not going to be in bondage anymore. And just this idea of, if you're one of the descendants of Abraham and you should be made free, and now he's talking about his kids and his family and his next of generation, if he's become free, then they should also be free.
Yeah, that kind of language and those kind of connections between songs, like, you can start to just really understand why Kanye is acting the way he is at the beginning of the album here, because he's gotten back to God and he wants to exhibit Christian-like behavior. You know, he wants to follow God. But for so many years, he wasn't, and he felt like so many people were against him. And he's reached this place where he's finally ready to connect with God again, and he feels like he is following God. It makes sense that he would be so aggressive and so overly protective of his family and want to make sure they don't just make the same mistakes as him. You kind of get that antagonistic energy then at the beginning, because if anybody's trying to stray you or your family away from that path, then you're ready to fight.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you'll feel like it's kind of life or death at that point.
Yeah.
So that ends the first part, which all of that Genius labels as a chorus. Makes no sense to me.
My favorite chorus ever.
Then we get the verse, which I like to call verse number 2. And it starts with that interpolation, melodic interpolation, where we get stand up for my home, even if I take this walk alone. I bow down to the king upon the throne. And there's a couple things here that we have to get into. First, standing up for your home. And that gets to the combative nature that we've talked about, and him feeling like it's kind of them against the world at this point, in a way that dissipates as we reached the tipping point on the album. He doesn't need to stand up anymore so much as just lead. But even if I take this walk alone, could be recalling Psalm 23, which I actually want to get the New Testament edition.
It's much easier to read.
Psalm 23. All right. This might be familiar to a number of you. It's one of the most popular Psalms. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And then it kind of goes on. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So you get some resonances in like dwelling in the house of the Lord and standing up for my home. Prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. And he's getting ready to talk about facing all of his enemies. And the idea of walking through the darkest valley, which is that the original, like, as I walk through the I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. So that's where that comes from as well. So he's walking through this valley, and it's just him at this point, ready to combat everything that will come with that. But then we also get a reference to Revelation 4, which
here we go.
All the Revelation visions. This would also be the third song in a row that we've had references to Revelation. I don't know who's speaking here. Is it John?
Yeah. Doesn't John write Revelations? We should know this kind of stuff, right?
I feel like at this point we should.
Who wrote Revelations? Revelation. John.
Okay, so John. So this section is called The Throne in Heaven. And he talks about walking into this room, and a voice speaking to me like a trumpet said, "Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this." And at once I was in the Spirit, and there before me was a throne in heaven with someone sitting on it. And the one who sat there had the appearance of jasper and ruby. A rainbow that shone like an emerald encircled the throne. Surrounding the throne were 24 other thrones, and seated on them were 24 elders. They were dressed in white and had crowns of gold on their heads. From the throne came flashes of lightning, rumblings, and peals of thunder. In front of the throne 7 lamps were blazing. These are the 7 spirits of God. Also in front of the throne was what looked like a sea of glass, clear as crystal. And it gets a little weird here. In the center around the throne were 4 living creatures, and they were covered with eyes in front and in back. The first living creature was like a lion, the second was an ox, the third had a face like a man, the fourth was like a flying eagle. Each of the 4 living creatures had 6 wings and was covered with eyes all around, even under their wings. Day and night they never stopped saying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who is come and is to come." Whenever the living creatures give glory, honor, and thanks to him who sits on the throne and who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before him who sits on the throne and worship him who lives forever and ever. They lay their crowns before the throne and say, "You are worthy, our Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things." So I bow down to the king upon the throne. Kind of recalls that vision of the 24 elders who all fall down in front of the throne and praise God.
Yeah, and I think maybe something we haven't gotten into too much about Revelation, and the fact that Kanye keeps referencing it, is what Revelation really represents, and how it is like, it's like the end, right? It's like the end of the world pretty much, but it's also like a chance for a new beginning, and kind of recalls baptism and this idea that you could start anew. And this is what the whole album's about, like Kanye really coming out of the negative behavior, going into the tracks like Everything We Need and Water, and like literally being baptized and having a different demeanor going forward and acting more Christian like. I think that this whole first part of the album is so filled with tension because Kanye keeps referencing these antagonistic, combative parts of the Bible that also have double meanings, and kind of like Revelation and referencing Isaiah. It's I think there's an inherent tension there that he's recalling for this beginning part of the album, where Kanye, the storyteller, knows that maybe he's not acting in the best way here at the beginning of the album. Yeah, you should protect your family. Yeah, you should follow God. But sometimes there are better ways to do it, and there are more peaceful ways to do it, and there are more godlike ways to do it. And as we see here, especially in this verse, it's not really the case. He's pretty aggressive.
Especially the next two lines show that so well. My life is his, I'm no longer my own. That's that kind of selflessness and highbrowness you'd expect from somebody that's trying to live the life that he wants to live. But then you get, I pray to God that he'll strengthen my hand. They will think twice stepping onto my land. And there you go, right back to the combativeness, to this willingness to fight and get angry. And there's kind of a beautiful tension there again, or at least like imagery, because I pray to God that he'll strengthen my hand. It comes from Exodus 17 in the Old Testament, where the Israelites end up in a battle against the Amalekites, and Moses goes up onto a cliffside, and as long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. Did I say that right? The Israelites were winning when his hands were up, and they were losing when they were down. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side, one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, write this on a scroll as something to be remembered, and make sure that Joshua hears it, because I will completely blot out the name of Amalek from under heaven. Because hands were lifted up against the throne of the Lord will be at war against the Amalekites from generation to generation. So it's just really getting into, again, this aggressiveness and this warring that's going on. And even in the Close on Sunday music video, it's at this point that Kanye kneels down on a cliff where he's like high up, and we see him raise his hands to shoulder height and kind of bow his head, kind of taking on the position that Moses is often depicted in when keeping his hands in the air during this fight. So there really is this sense of like battle and confrontation that doesn't jive with the peacefulness that we want to reach.
Yeah, it also speaks to the complexity of the album, because it's essentially he's recalling spiritual warfare, and what Moses was doing wasn't a bad thing. He was channeling the energy of God for good. It's just like, you get it, right? Like there's like a tension there. Like, yes, like Kanye is using the strength of God to like protect his family, and that's good, but it just seems like he gets to such a better place in the second part of the album, and is more actually attentive to his family, and more attuned to them, and aware of his environment, and just seems generally better, I guess.
Right. Such a key difference in language between the front half and the second half.
By the way, Old Testament has some real gnarly shit in there. Like, we got this Moses saying, Jacob wrestling God. I'm like, damn, Kanye's recalling some very specific imagery.
Absolutely. The Isaiah part, the Old Testament is wild. It's wild. So then we get, another reference. I draw the line. So they will think twice stepping onto my land, as in I will make anybody pay who's going to come in here and try to like change me, do anything, like any of that. I draw the line. It's written in the sand. Oof. This is again a bit of that duality. So the phrase line in the sand is often thought of coming from John 8 in the New Testament. And John 8 tells a story of these people show up at the court, and they gather around Jesus, and they bring in a woman who is caught in adultery. And they make her stand before the group and say, like, this woman, she was sleeping with somebody else. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now, what do you say? And the Bible says they were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. I guess, accusing him of something. It seems like the Pharisees were constantly trying to make Jesus seem like a fraud and kept challenging him over and over again. So it's in Jesus's response that the line comes from. But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." Again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And at that point, they kind of started drifting away. Nobody was throwing the first stone. And then Jesus asked the woman, "Has no one condemned you?" And she says, "No one." And Jesus says, "Then neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin." So there's this kindness that he gives to her when he's drawing in the sand and ignoring the people that want him to have her stoned to death. But Jesus doesn't actually draw like a combative line in the sand the way that others in time have, or the way that the idiom is used, right? Like, if you cross this line, I'm going to hurt you. Like, it wasn't that.
Yeah, I mean, it specifically recalls the Alamo, as Genius points out, when Travis drew a line in the sand and asked those who would fight to the death to cross. I mean, that's the energy it always carries. So,
but yeah, that idea of like conflict deflated by the fact that Jesus was sitting there writing on the ground with his finger like in the dirt until people decided not to condemn this woman. It foreshadows, again, the journey. It goes from this sense of conflict to this sense of having patience and having understanding for somebody that other people wanted you to condemn. Kanye isn't acting as Christ-like here. He's more like the group of Pharisees at this point than he is Jesus.
I just wanted to get to a whole thing about the Jezabel, but I got to wait till the last lines before we do that. So let's keep moving.
We're almost there. Try me and you will see that I ain't playing.
Damn.
Very aggressive, Kanye. Now back up off my family. Move your hands. This is low-key one of my favorite moments because you may recall, if you've listened to the album, there's a song called Hands On, where Kanye talks about the people that are condemning him and judging him. And what he asked them is that if they have the power, if they have the energy, the patience, the ability to lay their hands on him and pray for him rather than condemning him. And it's almost calling out the hypocrisy. Like, if you're Christians, you're supposed to be praying for me. You're not supposed to be hating me and being so angry towards me. But here in this early part of the album, Kanye is the one saying, move your hands. Like, I don't want you to have anything to do with me. Like, any of you people that are condemning me, trying to come on my land, trying to tell me what to do. And just that change from move your hands to lay your hands on me it's why I love narrative, man.
Love it. That's beautiful.
So he goes from move your hands to I got my weapons in the spirit's lands. So, again, threatening, almost like the guy on the porch that pulls out the shotgun. And you're like, get off my property, whippersnappers.
Clint Eastwood.
Yeah. Any Clint Eastwood movie since 1994. And Weapons in the Spirit's Land just feels like he has his faith and religion behind him, right? Almost like he's going to use his religion as a weapon, which probably isn't the best way to use religion.
Probably, yeah, you know what? Probably not.
And then lastly, we have the following, the closing lines. Jezabel, don't even stand a chance. Jezabel, don't even stand a chance.
Good old Jezabel. Great band, by the way. The Jezabels, check them out.
I read the website every day. I don't read the website every day.
Okay, so Jezabel. Jezabel shows up in 3 chapters in the Bible. 2 of them are Kings, and that's where she gets the most time, most of the spotlight. So I'm going to read this from Kanye, I called you Kanye. Chris likes to read from Bible Gateway. I like Bible study tools. They make it a little easier for me.
Okay.
Because there's always like commentary on what each chapter is about and everything. But basically, there's kings is about several different kings, and one of them is Ahab. And I'm just going to read this. His reign is given extensive treatment, not so much because of its extraordinary political importance, but because of the serious threat to covenant fidelity and continuity that arose in the northern kingdom during his reign. Ultimately, the pagan influence of Ahab's wife Jezabel through Ahab's daughter is nearly led to the extermination of the house of David and Judah. So basically, this woman, Jezebel, was a pagan, and she kind of became this, in modern culture, she's become this sign of like infidelity and sexual promiscuity, and somebody who uses, their sexual nature to lure men and make them do sinful things. So basically, that's kind of the energy she carries there in Kings. But Jezebel comes back one more time, just one last time, in, what do you know it, Revelation 2. And so basically, the part where she comes in is there's Revelation 2 is Jesus speaking to the seven churches. He's speaking through John, right?
Yeah, he's telling John to write letters to these seven churches in Asia.
Yeah. These seven churches are they're like the crossroads of trade or whatever. Like, they're really important churches, and they're all filled with sin and aren't living by God properly. And each church gets a different message and has a different complication. The part where Jezebel comes in is the part about Thyatira, which is the church that follows the false prophets. And Jezebel is famously known as this false prophet. And in line 20, nevertheless, I have this against you. You tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophet. By her teaching, she misleads my servants into sexual immorality and the eating of food sacrificed to idols. So I think the interesting connection between all of this is that Jezebel is a false prophet. She is a symbol of a false prophet. And she also is kind of this symbol of infidelity and adultery that Kanye has been trying to move away from, something he's always recalled as a negative part of his like Jesus persona, or something. He was addicted to sex in the past. Like, all of this behavior he's trying to leave behind because he wants to be a family man and a good husband and a good father. But the fact that Jezebel is a false prophet, and in the same song, he talks about vipers in a way that defies the way Isaiah talked about them, who is probably the most famous prophet in the Bible, the one you should be listening to. I just think that again could be complete coincidence that both of these people are mentioned in the same song. But I think ultimately Kanye, the storyteller, Kanye trying to capture the energy of his character in the first part of this album, somebody who thinks he's following God, but maybe isn't thinking through everything properly and isn't living as Christian-like as he could be, is kind of picking and choosing who he's going to listen to and which Bible passages speak to him, and maybe not living the way he should be.
Yeah, I like that idea of Jezebel and Isaiah, like prophet and false prophet, because we've seen Kanye, and you and I were talking about this yesterday, going over how he's developed duality over the course of his albums. Like on 808s and Heartbreak, the duality was just the lifestyle I'm able to live versus what my life lacks, which was just very literal in like, I can fly first class, but I don't have pictures of kids. Like, I have pictures of cribs, but I have to leave this wedding right away and couldn't really take anybody. Then you go into My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and you have this larger fantasy versus reality duality coming in that's very broad in the idea. But then that gets redefined again on Yeezus when we get the ego versus vulnerability. What was very broad now becomes very personal and internal. And then we get Pablo, and it becomes lifestyle, right? And it's not just his life, but it's the icons of the woman, the big booty model, and the bride that are on the album cover. It's Saul and Paul. You're finally bringing it to like figures and biblical entities until you arrive at Ye and Kids See Ghost also having this duality. now getting to Jesus is King, where all of this duality is still present and having this tension, but you're starting to have it brought down into just Jezabel. Like Jezabel comes to represent everything that's evil and wrong that could try to sway Kanye or lead him astray, compared to, prophets like Isaiah and John and all these, Matthew and all these other people that wrote the Bible that say the things that Kanye wants to follow.
Yeah, and I think another great callback here is that line, I draw the line, it's written in the sand. Jesus is protecting a woman. Didn't she commit adultery, right?
Oh, fuck, yeah.
And like Jesus is showing such kindness to this Jezebel figure. And Kanye at the end is like, you don't even stand a chance. He is just that's where his mind's at, and he can't be brought away from it.
Oh my fucking God. That's the coolest thing to me about this song now. Oh, we didn't make that connection yesterday at all.
I know. I was thinking about it when we were talking about it just a few minutes ago. I was like, I got to save it.
No, that is so good. Like everybody, ignore everything else that we've talked about up to this point and all the the high connections we tried to make. That's it. That's the simple connection.
Yeah.
Like he references the part where Jesus is kind to this adulteress, saying, "You who are without sin, cast the first stone." And that contrast, that's the Christ-like behavior. But Kanye's behavior is saying, Jezebel, don't even stand a chance. I got my weapons. Like, oh my God. He's not Christ-like.
No.
That's not yet. He wants to be. He's trying to be, but not yet.
Man. Did it again.
Came through. 3 seconds left on the clock.
You know what? I'm not mad at him anymore.
No, you're not?
I think I'm good.
Good. And people say this album has no nuance. That's so good. Man, that might be one of my favorite contrasts I've ever seen Kanye do now.
Chris is ruined.
I'm so hyped about this.
We can't even get to the last line of the song anymore.
Chick-fil-A!
That's pretty much all that needs to be said about it.
Yeah. Brings in... it's not Kanye. I thought it was always Kanye saying it, but it's A$AP Bari.
Well, there is something to say about that line, actually.
That it's another moment of yelling?
Yeah. The third song in a row where he screams at the end or something.
Yeah, what's at the end of Sella? Is it,
I don't even remember.
Oh, we get that, I'm not going to be able to do it. The ooh.
Yeah.
Like the grunting.
Yeah.
That he does. It's not as lyrical as grada-da-da.
Yeah.
But you get that's just utterances followed by Follow God, which has the scream at the end, and then Closed on Sunday that now just screams Chick-fil-A. 3 songs that are supposed to show tension all end with this tense, heightened scream.
Yeah.
Or utterances, or just burst of energy that really contrast a sense of peace or calmness.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it recalls obviously the Grata-ta-tat from Feel the Love. The first half of Kitsy Ghost is kind of like the first half of Jesus is King. Recalls the screaming in Monster. That seems to just be a go-to motif with Kanye.
He likes screams.
Yeah. I mean, it conveys his point very well.
Yeah. Sometimes you could get into languages and word, but
Yeah. God, I think I'm starting to lose my voice.
I think I'm starting to lose my mind.
Jezebel's getting to you.
That's right. All these vipers. Oh, man. And then Viper, we even talk about Everything We Need, talks about the Garden of Eden and eating the apple, and the fact that the devil came as a viper.
Save it, man. Save it.
More resonances between these songs. That's just the cool thing about if you're looking for what to admire most about Jesus is King from the artistry perspective and the lyrical perspective, it's just how strongly Kanye weaves together this intercontextuality on the album. And if you really want to admire the artistry of this album, it's from allusion, reference, and intercontextuality. It may not always have lyrical wordplay like Gorgeous or something from My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, but the ability that he displays with intercontextuality is, man, there's so much cool stuff that he does with it.
Yeah. It's and it kind of makes sense because there's so many pictures, kind of like thinking back to when he posted the first track listing of Jesus is King, and you could see they had the Bible out and he had all these markings in the Bible. Like the dude is just consumed with the Bible. And I guess I could make it seem like all these biblical references are really scattershot. It seems to me like somebody who studied the Bible very closely and it became part of his life, that he knows all of these references so well that like the duality that's going on and the plays on stories from the Bible, kind of like Jesus, writing in the sand and him playing on that by saying drawing a line in the sand. Like it just seems like somebody who gets it, who's really living by the Bible, who is more than just like influenced by it and motivated to live a different way. Like it's become part of him now.
It's like when you study something that closely, you're able to make references and relate to it and like very easily. Just like if we were having conversations all the time, we could reference Kanye stuff
and
all
we do
the time, and yeah, just drop in like a Roses reference, like, oh, the medical. And I was having this conversation with my wife. She was talking about how she feels like her, not a time for a Kanye reference, but she was talking about how she feels like her grandma not having money directly led to her grandma not getting the proper care in the hospital and eventually passing away a few years ago. And just like makes me think of Roses.
You didn't mention Magic Johnson there?
I did.
Oh gosh.
But it worked in the flow of the conversation.
Okay. You got to keep her.
Yeah. I have somebody that understands my issues and my weaknesses.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, it just becomes so infused into what he knows and what he can reference that I draw a line in the sand. I'm going to think about Jesus and I'm going to talk about Jezabel, and like, that's perfect. I get this continuity. The same way any pastor could write a sermon that makes all these references and connections.
Or he didn't do any of that and we're full of shit.
Oh, tune in next week and find out.
The climactic conclusion of Watching the Throne.
Yeah, where we condense 7 songs into one episode.
And give up. 'Cause it's too hard.
There's music and there's lyrics. What do you want from us?
Okay, so what's next? On God.
On God, which, oh God, that's going to be... That's going to be an interesting one.
Again, it's a song I'm almost ready to say will be easier than everything we've done so far, but I'm 100% wrong about that, so fuck it.
Right, because to me, I think about like the meat of On God is really in the last like 6 or 7 lines. But it's going to be something where we start researching the front half of the song and be like, oh no.
Yeah, it references an even longer poem.
We have to read all that. I'll do it.
Kanye is like one of those shitty teachers you have that gives you lots of homework.
Kind of. I've done more work for this podcast than I ever did in college.
In school, period.
That's very true. Wow. Never thought about that. Though the craziest thing that I'm going to say right now is that we've been doing this podcast longer than we were in college.
Yeah, that is 100% true, and I feel very good about it.
Man, I feel very weird about that. Like, you think about all the experiences that you have in college, then all the experiences we've had with this podcast. Man.
It was all leading me here.
That's right. Me to you, you to me.
Yeah, me to yay. Yay to you.
Well done.
The trifecta.
Well done. All right. Well,
Why are you so far away?
until next time. Am I far away?
You felt like you were far away for a second.
Maybe I was.
Chris is already leaving
Maybe
this podcast.
I'm just trying to end the episode, man.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. So, see you guys in the next episode. But until then, stay wavy.
Keep it loopy.
And
Keep it loopy.